Take my hand. I'll lead you into death. By a whisper in the shadows. On Year 3. Episode 41. Chapter 23. Getting to the hospital had been a blur. Izuku wasn't looking at him. His eyes weren't landing on anything. Katsuki couldn't remember getting out of Akio's basement. Red, 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 so much red everywhere. Izuku was losing too much blood. He had lost too much blood. A person can't live without that much blood. There were a lot of heroes. Hawks and Mirako were there. All Might was somewhere in the background, reassuring his classmates. And Deborah was there, with so many heroes, but nobody could help. Izuku kept closing his eyes. He had to stay away. Katsuki had to keep him awake. He remembered someone trying to take him away from Izuku. Aizawa stopped that. He couldn't leave him. He had to save him. Katsuki's cheeks were red. There was so much noise around him. Too much noise. Izuku wasn't waking up. He was pulled away. He screamed, letting off an explosion. They let him go with Izuku in the ambulance. The waiting room was cold. Katsuki was covered in blood. Izuku's heart stopped. Clear. Again. Clear. Again. Clear. They got to the hospital. They tried taking Izuku away again. Katsuki screamed. He couldn't let Izuku go. Midnight showed up. Everything went dark. Katsuki stared at his bloody hands. He didn't know how much time had passed. Doctors had looked at him, patched him up a little. They fixed Aizawa's arm. His classmates wouldn't go home. They paced, slept, fidgeted in the waiting room. Katsuki stared at his hands. He was gonna be sick. He went to the bathroom, stood at the sink. He looked a mess. He turned on the hot water and scrubbed. He scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed. The blood wouldn't come off. His hands were burning. He scrubbed harder. Why wouldn't it come off? Another hand covered his. They turned off the tap. Katsuki struggled against it. It hardened. Katsuki lashed out with an explosion. His ears rang. He dropped to the floor, curling in on himself. He didn't know how long he stayed like that. The hand had left. Then there was someone else in front of him. Dark hair, dark eyes. Aizawa. He was speaking. Touch your kid. Touch him. No, Katsuki didn't want to be touched. He wanted his skin off. He shook his head. That's okay. Your parents will be here soon, okay? They'll come straight in here. Katsuki nodded. That was fine. Aizawa kept talking, telling him random things. Katsuki saw Kirishima behind him. Kirishima smiled when they locked eyes. Katsuki had blasted Kirishima. Sorry. He choked. Kirishima shook his head. No need to be sorry, bro. No one said after that. Kirishima and Aizawa stayed as silent comforters. Katsuki slowly calmed down. Then the door opened. His mom and dad were there. Katsuki couldn't hold it anymore. He whimpered, holding out his arms. His mom was there instantly, pulling him into her chest as he broke. He heaved, choking sobs, shaked as his parents held him. It was pathetic and weak, and Katsuki couldn't give a shit. It took him a while to calm down again. He was grateful Aizawa and Kirishima left. Eventually, his parents had him standing. They helped clean off the rest of the blood. More of it gone than he realized. A nurse came in at one point to look at his wounds. They got him in one of the hospital showers before she dressed them, getting him fresh, clean clothes as well. That made him want to cry again. Izuku's hoodie was gone, ripped apart and covered in blood. Izuku loved that hoodie. It was the first thing he felt when he was truly owned. Katsuki wouldn't have to get Aizawa to buy it again. When they returned to the waiting area, more people had joined their crowd. Some of their classmates' parents were there, most likely only to make sure their kids were okay. Tsukelchi was there, as well as Hawks, Mirako, and All Might. Katsuki knew they'd have to do interviews at some point. Something he was very much dreading. Inko was there too. Izuku told him they talked. Katsuki's sure he'd remembered more of her now, but they still have a long way to go before their relationship mended. Or at least, he remembered more of her before Akio took him again. He didn't want to think about how much of Izuku's mind they lost this time. Katsuki felt ready to throw up every time he thought about Akio making Izuku feel like he had been there for weeks. Weeks of who knows what horrific torture. Izuku still came back to Katsuki in the end. He still remembered Katsuki. He still saved Katsuki. When Katsuki should have been the one to save Izuku. When Izuku woke up, Katsuki was still going to kill him for jumping in front of that bullet. A doctor came out. The surgery went well. Izuku was alive and stable, but he is still unconscious, and we are not sure when he will wake up. Izuku was alive. Katsuki marched up to the doctor. Izuku was alive. Where is he? It was the second day of Katsuki being in the hospital. A nurse had brought a spare bed for him to use. When they understood, he would not be leaving. Hospital policies be damned. His parents had packed him a bag. His friends bringed him an assortment of things to pass the time. Not that he used them. The only time he wasn't staring at Izuku was when he was in the bathroom or shower. Even when he ate, he kept his eyes on Izuku. When others came to visit, he would interact, but his main focus was always Izuku. Aizawa wasn't much better. Whether it was just the two of them, they sat in silence, observing the rhythm beating of Izuku's heart monitor, their only relief. The only reason Aizawa went home in the first place was because he fell asleep on pain meds, and Yamada carried him out. Katsuki only started taking painkillers on the second day. He was much too numb before that to feel anything. Now, he felt like one giant bruise. Class started again for everyone in 2 days. Aizawa said Katsuki could have the week off, but then he'd have to return. Katsuki was going to beat Izuku's ass if he didn't wake up in a week. The door opened. A nurse came in with Katsuki's dinner. Kylie was her name. She was an English student, and her Japanese was only half decent. Yamada had tried speaking to her in English, but she said she really needed the practice. She was nice, always smiling, and quirkless. Katsuki made sure to remember her name. She was going to be an incredible nurse. The Aizawa Yamada clan came in as she was leaving. As always, when Eri saw Izuku, she looked ready to burst into tears. Katsuki opened his arms. She launched herself at him, squeezing tightly. "I'm sorry," she cried. Katsuki held her tighter. "We've talked about this, baby listener," Yamada said. "It's not your fault." "But I could have helped. I could have rewound his cuts." "Rewound, sweetheart, and no, you were upset. You could have caused more damage at the time, which is no one's fault. Izuku's okay. He's gonna wake up and everything's gonna be okay." Katsuki buried his face in Eri's hair. He wanted to believe Yamada. He really did. But he was terrified Izuku wouldn't wake up. He had improved since the first day, but sometimes Katsuki would look at him, only for his breathing to catch at how dead he looked. He understood Eri's guilt, hated that she felt that way. Of course it wasn't her fault. Who knows what could have happened to Izuku if she tried using her quirk in her distressed state. Katsuki hated that he cared for her in that moment, begged in a state of hopelessness for someone to do something, anything. Of course, it wasn't her fault. It wasn't any of theirs. But not being able to do anything to help, to save Izuku in a time he needed it the most, broke something in Katsuki. How could he call himself a hero after that? Bakugou was asleep, head cushioned forward on the bed next to Izuku's arm. When his dads announced it was time to leave after noticing Bakugou was gone to the world, Hitoshi asked for a couple of extra minutes. They didn't question him, only said that they'd be waiting in the car. Sometimes, Hitoshi felt thoroughly blessed at the family he found. He sat on the other side of Izuku's bed. the boy's heart monitor, kept his silent company. He couldn't take his eyes off of Izuku's face, off his scars. Absently, his fingers traced along the healing cuts that bit into his cheek and jaw. His other hand had drifted to his own scars, almost completely healed now. It broke Hitoshi's heart to see Izuku like that. Him and Hizashi both. They had already talked about it, cried together as Shouta and Eri slept. No one escaped life unharmed. But there were some scars that cut deeper, that only people who were like you could understand. Being muzzled was the worst time in Hitoshi's life. Having his voice taken away from him, being subdued to less than a human, all because someone didn't like his quirk. A quirk he wouldn't even use. Hizashi was the same, all because he was louder than the other kids. But Izuku? What reason, fair, right, or otherwise, did they have to muzzle him? A power move? Just to shut him up? Hitoshi shivered. He took Izuku's hand in his own, squeezed it. Wake up soon, Kyodai. I still can't believe you brought the letters. Shouta looked up from his homework he was correcting. His husband sat across from him, Izuku in between them. Bakugou had stepped out momentarily for a shower. Ah, he thought. So this is it. He knew Hizashi had been dwelling on something over the past few days. It was bothering his husband immensely. But Shouta had learned when and where to ask questions. He was certain it was something to do with their time in Akio's basement. Something Shouta had done or said. The letters made sense. Shouta should have guessed they were the issue. He would have been mad too. It was just precaution. It was just you giving up. Ouch. That hurt. More because Hizashi was right than anything else. Their letters were a failsafe. A just in case I don't make it home. Here work was never a guarantee after all. They kept them together in a drawer in their house. Backups on various disks and UBSs. They were constantly editing them, adding more things they deemed important. They had letters for each other. Hitoshi and Eri. Shouta knew Hizashi had more, but never asked for who. He didn't need to know. Shouta also had one for each of his students. Past students he cared about. Vigilantes that had grown on him. Nomuri, his fellow teachers. Heroes, both that he admired and resented. Tsukalchi, his parents and Hisashi's adopted father. Izuku. I wasn't going to fight him. They stared at each other, Hisashi's eyes filled with tears, both of anger and melancholy. He lowered his head, his tears falling over his cheeks. Shouta put his work to the side, walking to his husband. He pulled Hisashi's head to his chest, pressed a kiss to the top of it as his husband's arm wound their way around his back. I was ready to die if it meant you could live. If it meant our other students, our kids, could live. Hizashi knew he was right. Shouta understood why Hizashi was upset. There was nothing they could do about it now. I know you're hurt, but I won't lie and say I won't do it again. Shouta sighed. I think as well, a naive part of me hoped he would remember. Hoped he wouldn't do it. He did remember. Hisashi's voice was choked. That's where Bakugou got his opening. He flinched. Hizashi paused. I think if Bakugou hadn't done something, however, he would have still shot you. Reaper would have. Not Izuku. That was a firm realization in Shouta's mind. Izuku and Reaper were two completely different people. Even so, one would not exist without the other. But Izuku would never be held for Reaper's actions. For what Akio made him do. Not in Shouta's mind. He's gonna feel so guilty. Hizashi whispered. Shouta squeezed him tighter. They held each other in silence, gazing at Izuku, letting the sound of his soft heartbeats bring them peace. He was alive. They were. That's something we'll cross when we come to it. He planted another kiss on Hisashi's head. Together. Starting off Valentine's Day to a wonderful start. I mean, what else to start other than sobbing our fucking hearts out? Sobbing. I'm sobbing. That's what I'm doing. S-O... Hold up. Yeah. S-O-B-S. Sobbing. Wait, hold up. Sobbing. Bear. So that would be bear. Bear is in the top. That one's B, I think. I'm pretty sure. Okay. Anyways, I need to see it, like, physically. Otherwise, my mind warps it. So, I'm not gonna say much. I'm just gonna say I hope you guys are having a better Valentine's Day than me. I'm saying this. It's not even Valentine's Day, but having to read this shit makes me sad. So, I'm glad I don't gotta read it on Valentine's Day. Sorry about you guys, though. Imagine. Losers! Sorry. I love you guys. I'm in a silly, goofy mood, okay? I'm sad, okay? I'm sad. I'm just sad, okay? I'm sad, so fuck off. Anyways, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds, have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server, socials, and merch shop are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.